Good evening, everybody. This is Charlie Turnbull. This is Tuesday night is cheese night. We are talking Asturias. We are talking Asturian cheese. Sorry, we just had the map in there. So we were discussing the mountains that face over the Bay of Biscay and the winds coming across. And it's a bit of a stormy sea, that isn't it? Just off that coast, Rupert.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's a really rough old place, and it's a really popular destination for surfers. Actually, recently, it's kind of like it's very similar to Cornwall, somewhere like that. It's kind of like an Atlantic, rough kind of coastal, exposed kind of area. And,
yeah, that's a bit of the Atlantic coming in there. Right, we better introduce you. All the people who know you will know you are the cheese maestro, which you've told me today is the same as Spanish as it is in Italian. So cheese maestro from Brindisa. And you've been Brindisa has been bringing in cheeses from all over Spain for how long now, Rupert?
Well, just over 30 years now.
30 years.
Yeah. So
we're actually sort of about 1990, something like that.
Yeah. That's basically when we started to bring our first pallets of cheese came through in 1990. Yeah.
So what inspired you and Monica to say, you know what Britain needs? More Spanish cheese?
Well, it was partly because of living in Spain. I was brought up in Spain, and so that in 1990 I was in my early 20s, and was trying to find something to do where we could share like our enthusiasm for Spanish food, and but work in England and commute between the two countries really.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's yes, it is England's second home, Spain, isn't it? Not the area we're talking about up Asturias. Not Bilbao, not San Sebastian, that north coast. Much better known. Well, let's bring the map up now so people can see where we're traveling to find the awesome cheeses of Spain. So I'm going to zoom out a bit so everyone knows where we are. Right. So that, in case no one knows, is called Spain, right? With this lovely little section called Portugal on the left, and that's the Iberian Peninsula, and it sort of hangs off the bottom of Europe like a club foot. But with the area we're talking about at the top here is Asturias.
Yeah.
I take you've been there many times, Rupert.
Yes, I have. I've been lucky enough in the last couple of years. I've been a few times. Yeah. I mean, I love it. I must say, I'd love to be able to have time. I go for work on the whole. I'd love to be able to have time to go and have some lovely lunches in seaside. Fishing ports and things like that. Enjoy some seafood there. And
is it technically one of the Basque counties? I'm going to show my.
No, it's next to the Basque Country.
It's next to the Basque Country. So while we've got the map up, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about sheep? Are we talking about cows? Where are they pastured? What's the history of sheep in this region?
Okay, so mostly because of the grass, because of the rainfall, it's Spain's biggest area for cows, for cattle.
Okay, and, so that sets it apart from the Basque Country, which is known for its sheep's milk cheeses, and that's just next door.
Cabral, yes, yeah. Even though, ironically, the Basque Country is just as wet, I should think, as Asturias. But cows is where the Asturians have gone, and in Galicia, and so the cheeses that we've got tonight are from dairies that are more or less about 25 to 30 kilometers inland on the coast, and so they just as the mountains begin to kind of rise up and catch that weather coming in off the Atlantic. So by coincidence, all three dairies are at about 650 meters.
Okay,
so a little bit higher than the south of England, but not quite as high as.
So sort of near Oviedo, that sort of area, or.
Yeah, and then a bit to the left for Cabrales.
So all this area here. Let's get on to Cabrales, the monster cheese that is Cabrales, because we've got a lot to say about that as it's a global icon in its own way.
Yeah.
Let's start with you telling us about, where do you want to start? I've got three cheeses here. Let's get them up. We've got one non-blue. Are we going to go there first?
Yeah, let's do that one first. Yes. So this cheese is called the Massimo del Resilo, and it comes from a village in Asturias called Pravia, and it's a village where like historical records in that village go back to the 7th century, and so it's named after the King Silo, this Visigothic king. And this recipe of the Massimo is based. It's a modern interpretation of a traditional Asturian cheese recipe called a fuego pitu. And traditionally, Asturian farmhouse cheeses are small.
I'm looking at this one, and I'm thinking this is maybe 1.5 kilos when it's hot.
This is a 2 kilo cheese.
A 2 kilo cheese, okay.
Yeah, and also it's a lactic cheese, and so it's one of Spain's biggest lactic cheeses. It's a kind of this is an adaptation of a traditional recipe. So they've made. Okay.
Let's just explain lactic cheeses to the people. This is a learning experience. Lactic means we are not using any rennet to make this cheese. Often nowadays people will throw in a splash just for bit of texture.
This has got a splash of rennet in it to make sure.
This historically would have been 100% acid. So the structure of the curd is going to be very loose.
Yeah. And so with this cheese, when they put the rennet into the vat, and when the curd is set, they have this a kind of special spoon which they scoop the curd out of the vat and put it into the molds. And then they leave the curd in the molds for 24 hours.
Okay.
And just let it drain. The idea is for it to drain as much as possible. And then after that draining process, they take the cheeses out of the molds and salt them. And it's the salting that helps this special rind to grow, the geotrichum rind. If you look on, where's my camera gone? There, you can see the kind of brain-like,
mine as well,
kind of corally structure,
vermiculated,
on there. And a lot of people, you might be more familiar with this rind on a younger lactic cheese, but this particular cheese is 6 months old. So it's really for a lactic cheese, it's really mature. And,
I've seen 6-month-old crottin de Chavignol, something like that, which is again as a geotrichum cheese, but they're like golf balls by that point. You can honestly get a par 4 on them. So this is retaining a lot of moisture. I suppose it's bigger.
No, it is bigger. And at this age, I wouldn't really recommend eating the rind. I think it's nicer without it.
Yeah, I wasn't planning to.
Good.
But we're getting a significant breakdown going in there. So a geotrichum rind has a penetration as a yeast or a mold of maybe, with a typical Loire goat's cheese, maybe a couple of millimeters. But here it's going in its full centimeter, almost as much as a Camemberti, a mold might do.
Yeah.
So is that a sign of its age? I'm taking it. It's just had a long time to get that breakdown going.
Yeah, very much so. Yes. Yeah. And it's because it's a kind of a cheese made in a farming area. People there would be used to eating that cheese at all the different stages of its maturity. And,
well, that's one of the myths about all cheeses, is that there's one right time. When in the old days, cheese did not travel. It really didn't. You got the local cheeses. So there were 1 or 2 local recipes of which there would be many variations, particularly in age.
Yeah. So this cheese is made at about 650 meters altitude, and it's made in the village of Pravia. But Pravia has a river running through it, the River Nalon, and so it's an area of moisture, of rich pastures, and the cows that they use are a Swedish Frisian cow, and it's new to me. It was quite new to me as well. Actually, I was looking up on the internet, and it is a thing. There's a subspecies of Frisian in Sweden that has more fat, more protein in the milk, and that's what the dairy are looking for when they're making this cheese. Yeah,
because those Scandinavian breeds, I didn't know there was a Scandinavian Frisian, but those Scandinavian tend to be of the hardier stock, so they are high solid levels.
Yeah, and this cattle also, most of the year they'll be spending outside in the daytime, on open pastures up in the hills. And this time of year, when days are shorter, they don't tend to go out quite so much, but mostly they're out in the open.
Right, I'm fascinated by this. So I'm just going to bring up to the camera. I don't know if people see. This is an interesting because this is a lactic set. You can see the way that the curd breaks. That it's got that kind of soft yet it's got very little structure, but it's not pressed. You say so. This is just gently gravitationally compressed curd, just forming it
under its own weight. Yeah, yeah. And then I find that when you crack open the curd, just the smell that comes out of that clean kind of milky aroma. It's just there's just something very, considering it's a cheese which is 6 months old. I think it's incredibly fresh and fragrant.
I would agree. And I would also add that it's surprising because the rind doesn't smell that way.
No.
The rind is 10 different types of an animal has passed this way on its way past. You know,
it's kind of on a mission. Yeah,
it's on a mission. It's got a bit of urine and a bit of ammonia and a bit of
farmyard.
Farm on a wet day. Yes.
Yeah. But inside,
not at all.
Yeah.
So what about the so we've got the center, which has this dense creaminess. It's like congealed cream. But you've got this coat which has this completely different texture, and I'm not insulting it, but it's almost got the texture of a cheese slice and almost the color of it as well.
It's kind of shiny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got shiny and it's slightly elastic, which the main body of the cheese doesn't have. It's got a lot more flavor than your average cheese slice, that's for certain. And that is getting hints of farmyard, I think.
Yeah, much more umami.
Slightly more of umami, much more savory, almost like a cooked cheese flavor.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost heading towards a sort of camembert kind of a baked camembert flavor.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the cheese is in two very different stages, isn't it? On the center and on the outside.
I'm gonna try the combo now. It's really good. It's almost like the outside is like an accent. It just gives a slightly baser note to the lighter flavors that are in the center.
Yeah. And do you find it's quite a kind of strangely like quite a dry cheese? It kind of kind of puckers the mouth a bit as well, and that's one of the characteristics of these Asturian cheeses. It's the draining of the whey, and that creates this particular recipe and this particular style, which is what they look for.
Because these lactic cheeses tend to be at the drying, the desiccating end of the spectrum for cheeses. That's delicious. So is it a protected food name, or is it just a local speciality?
Well, this particular cheese it's a new concept, basically using an old recipe.
Okay.
So the old recipe would make a cheese of about kind of 400 grams, and it would be a small kind of cone-shaped cheese. And so this one is a 2 kilo one. The idea, I think, is it helps it to last better on the counter. It's an easier cheese to sell and to work with than some of the smaller cheeses. Yeah.
All right, we're 10 minutes in and we're only one cheese in. Might have to get a move on, Rupert.
Oh my God. Okay.
I have to say, I think that is delicious. I think that's really delicious.
It's really quite unusual. I mean, for a Spanish cheese, it's really unusual.
I don't know any other cheese like it in Spain. It would come across as sort of French, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Very much right. So. We're not doing the Cabrales yet. So who have we got next?
So the next cheese that we've got today is called La Peral.
And that's this chappy here.
This blue cheese here, yeah. And this is from Asturias, and it's about from a village about 25 kilometers away from Pravia, from Brasido, and also at the same altitude. And the difference with this cheese really is that, well, apart from it being blue, it's a pasteurized cheese. It's made with rennet. It's not lactic, and and it's salted on the rind. So if you look on the rind in this light, you can see on my piece there's a kind of slight kind of orange bloom there, which is a kind of has a slight marmitey kind of aroma to it, something like that. Kind of.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is that cake that you give to cattle. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that salty, like the big kind of red thing that they lick.
Well, I was thinking the brown one, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I get your Marmite, but it's so it's almost beginning to get a washed rind thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is it a pressed cheese? It feels firmer. So this kind of cheese could be, of a blood of verne texture, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's got much more rigidity. I'm sort of squeezing that quite hard, and it's not doing anything, kind of thing.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's a style of cheese which is made in a much more traditional way in terms of modern cheese making. There's no kind of caves, there's no kind of like unusual materials used, and
it's a penicillium roqueforti.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So it's got quite intense bluing towards the center. It's really getting in there and getting the blue is really colonizing that center. So it's sort of got a combination of you're getting the little, what I think of the cavelets that you get of the blood of vernes and the roqueforts, but you can clearly see the needling is vertical there. And you're getting, the encouragement of the mold through those blue needles, those veins there.
Yeah, and because also I think because it's a pasteurized cheese, there's something it's an easier, easier sounds pejorative, but it's not quite as complicated as some like as the Cabrales, and we find it's a really good alternative. If you don't want to kind of dive deep and enjoy the Cabrales, then La Peral is a really good.
I strongly endorse that. When I had my shop, we used to think of a blue cheese ladder, and at one end, we didn't stock it, but you think of the Cambozolas of this world, if you know what I mean. And then we used to come up through cheeses I very much promote, like Montagnolo and Gorgonzola Dolce, accessible. And at the other end, as we're about to discover, we had the Cabrales of this world, which are and this one is sort of halfway, isn't it? It's accessible. It's got the cream. I'm getting quite a lot of salt. The blue is very fresh in my mouth. It's very
They tend to be quite young cheeses. I mean, this one's probably about, I think, roughly about 3 months old. Just under 3 months old.
But for a 3-month-old cheese, the blue is right through the cheese. There's no
yeah.
You know what it's about.
It's quite, especially in the middle bit. It's really quite moist as well, isn't it?
It's very moist.
Lovely,
kind of granite. I think a cold, sweet white wine is where I'd like to go with this. So maybe, I don't know. It's a big area over in the Basque Country for apples. Is Asturias an apple country? Ciders and
very much so. Yeah, Asturians are mad about cider. And, so definitely, and they like a kind of dry, they like a dry flat cider.
Yeah.
Basically, they have a kind of their
sort of like an apple wine kind of thing.
Yeah, like totally kind of mouth puckering kind of.
Yes,
very much so.
But you also get. I was chatting to a fantastic guy, Alistair Morrell, who specializes in global ciders. Fantastic stuff, and he cider apples have the same range effectively that grapes do. So you can go all the way to those flats, those deeps, those rich, those viscous, the sweets. It's all possible in apple land. And I bet you that they have some sort of aged, high alcohol, high viscosity apple that sweet would go awesomely with.
Yeah.
I'm making that up.
They do. There's a lot of varieties. There's lots of Asturian apple varieties that are they're kind of the equivalent of a rare breed in the cheese world. Definitely, yeah.
Okay. Are we ready?
Let's do the Cabrales, because the Cabrales it's just an epic. It is an epic cheese, and the way that it's made, it's just. It's absolutely extraordinary. Really.
All right. Let's start from the beginning. Where's it made from? It's a PDO, isn't it? We're talking about this as a high level.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it's a cheese that has to come from the area. There's a village known as Cabrales in the mountains called Picos de Europa, and in that area there are around 20 dairies that are still making that cheese, and the requirements for making Cabrales are really quite flexible. So it can be made with sheep's milk, with goat's milk, with cow's milk, or with a blend of all three.
Wow.
So what people traditionally used to do was they'd send all their animals out, onto the mountains, bring them back home at the end of the day, milk all three species, then stick it all in a vat, and then so you never knew, how much sheep, how much goat, or how much cow would be in the recipe.
Wow.
And that was obviously, it's some time ago, basically.
Yeah.
And
people can be a bit more organized now.
Yeah, but people want to try and make the same cheese twice these days, and especially
old school,
especially if you want to kind of export it around the world. Your customers expect to be able to buy it again, and with something very similar again. And so our cheese comes from an affineur who we've been buying from for probably about 15 years now, and what used to happen in Cabrales was it was a cooperative, and so you could only buy Cabrales from the cooperative, and so all the makers would sell their cheese to the cooperative. They'd all get mixed up, and then when you went along to buy your cheese, you never knew which maker you were going to get your cheese from.
So not only did one maker could have made it with any milk, but then you don't even know which make you're getting, kind of thing.
Originally, yeah, but now that was just obviously it was very difficult. And so now, people who make Cabrales are allowed to sell it under their own names, under their own the names of their own dairies. So you can guarantee, if you find a particular Cabrales that you like, you can find it again without struggling. And so this chap, Pepe Bada, who we buy our Cabrales from, that's what he's been trying to do over the last at least the 15 years that we've been buying from him, is to create a consistent cheese which he matures himself, and then he sells in Spain and in the rest of the world.
So you talked earlier about La Peral not needing to be done in caves. That isn't the case for Cabrales. It needs to be matured in the caves around Cabrales.
Yeah. I mean, part of the thing, the Cabrales is like, you add the rennet, you add a tiny bit of Roquefort to it, you make the curd, you wait for the curd to form, then you drain off the whey, and then you knead the curd again before putting it into the molds. You need the curd, yeah, which is like after the whey has gone out, then it's just kind of like bread.
Wow.
And so, I mean, it's a really unusual way of making cheese. So then the cheese goes.
That process of draining the curd before you've put it in the mold, i.e., you allow the curd to be spread out over a table, for lack of a better word. That's quite a British style. Not quite cheddaring, but it's that take the curd on the table, and in cheddaring you stack it and you process it by flipping it and all sorts of things. So it's a sort of
more gentle, but the similar stage. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And where are you salting it? Are you salting the curd before you put it into the?
No, it goes into the molds, and it stays in the molds for 2 or 3 days, and then you salt one side, turn it over, and you take it out of the mold, and then you salt the other side when it comes out. And they're put into their first chamber in the dairy for 20 days, and in that 20 days, and again they begin to lose more moisture.
Yeah,
and which is the 20 days, about 5 days longer than most other dairies and Cabrales use. So Pepe's going for a drier cheese. But then what's bonkers, well, I think it's completely bonkers, is they take the cheeses up into the cave, and the caves belong to the government. Like you rent space from the government in the caves. They're like official cheese places. And the caves, they have to have certain requirements, and one of them, because they're all limestone caves, naturally formed limestone caves.
So they're going to be wet.
One of the requirements is that they have to have a stream running through them.
Okay.
And I found out today you can make an exception to this rule if the humidity in your cave is over 90%. And then
Okay, so
sometimes
if
they wave
means
the
that's okay. I love that.
requirement of
I
the
mean,
stream.
I don't want to be rude about environmental health officers. Some of my best friends are environmental health officers, but I can see the exact opposite rule counting in the UK. Even if you want to stream as a reason not to use a cave or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
it's
the next bit is even more bonkers, I think, because it's the most extraordinary cheese making method. So what they do is what Pepe does is he collects the water that drips off the stalactites,
right.
and then with that water they wash the rind of the cheese with the water off the stalactites, because what they want to do is they want to prevent any mold growth occurring on the surface of the cheese. So if you look at your piece of Cabrales, you'll see that there's nothing
none.
there.
Nothing there.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, really is nothing there. So, but he's not encouraging the growth of bacteria here. So it's not a washed rind in the sense of wanting to lay the groundwork for a different kind of ripening culture. We're just repressing molds.
Yeah. Because that helps. Also, it helps to control the strength of the cheese, if you can believe it.
What? Increase it or
no. Decreases the strength. Yeah.
On that note,
should we
let's
try
do it?
Yeah. Let me just cut some.
Normally, in my sort of studio spare room here, I have some what we call in our house EBR, some kitchen rolls, and but
yes,
you
need it for this. Yeah. But you can see on the bluing in this that the Cabrales is not pierced. It's the thing about these mountains and the Picos de Europa is that the Roquefort bacteria occurs naturally there. So although he pops a bit into the milk, it's the wind. It's in the air, and the Roquefort just.
I mean, that is densely molded, and that is typical of a Cabrales. So it's going all the way to the edge. And I want to just draw attention to the texture here. I don't know if we can focus. Come on, my friend, the camera. You can do this. Well, it will do in a second magically. There we go. Yeah. It's got a very fluffy, crumbly, soft texture, almost like slightly dried out cheese, cream cheese kind of thing. It really is. It crumbles really easily. There you go.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. Difficult. A little bit tricky to cut. Sometimes you get little bits flaking off it.
But it also, at age, in my experience, becomes smeary. It becomes very creamy. It really gets into the mouth. I need a drink. My first encounter with this cheese was at the World Cheese Awards. I think we were in Birmingham, and I didn't know it at all. I was naive, and it's got right under my tongue, and it's like, you get the saliva in there to kind of loosen it up a bit.
It's brilliant. I mean, sometimes.
Anyway, so I couldn't believe this, and I was offering it around to some of my cheese-loving friends, and it was brutal because at the wrong age, it's almost like you're chewing aluminium foil. It's got a real metallic element to it. I just couldn't believe they didn't want to enter this cheese. So I popped it into my bag, which I probably wasn't supposed to do. And I took it home to my cheese shop, and I had it on the counter to show customers, try this. And then one of the customers goes, "What do you mean? This is delicious." So, and I go, no, customer, slightly patronizing, and it had transformed, and all those aggressive flavors had parted like clouds on a sunny day, and suddenly all that complexity made sense and was balanced, and it's just such a big cheese. It's just, but its window of perfection, it's quite difficult to handle.
Yeah. I mean, this particular one is 6 months old. So, and some of the cheeses in the caves at high altitude, they'll age for a year.
Wow.
But I find that the older they are, the more kind of cleaner they get in a funny way, and the notes that get emphasized it's like mango, tropical fruit, like really delicious, delicious things. Obviously, you can't eat anything else for the rest, or taste anything else for the rest of the day, but it's worth it. There are days that you have to dedicate to Cabrales.
This is a bottle of wine cheese. You need to drink a bottle of wine with it. to be able to walk away. It's kind of
Yeah, I mean, like a kind of a sweet wine is pretty good with this as well. Like a sweet, like a PX or something like that. Yeah, sherry would be pretty tasty.
But it's this is the Spinal Tap cheese basically. It's turned up to 11. You know, this is the
yeah.
You know, it just goes. You think you've heard noise in Cheeseland? You haven't had Cabrales yet. This is the big boy. This is the one that makes people stop in their tracks.
But what's amazing about Asturias, which I love so much about it, is Cabrales is an everyday cheese. One of my colleagues at work, you know, they had it in their packed lunch when they went to school. I mean, it's just like it's just a totally normal everyday cheese for people, you know, in that part of the world.
I can imagine people coming from Asturias tasting other people's cheeses, going, "Something here." What's
yeah, totally.
Cheese? You know, come to my country, see my cheese. That's proper cheese.
Yeah.
I've got Alison here saying, "What about port?" Well, port's not. It's not close. It's not far away. What about?
Yeah, it's not that far away, and I think something with a little bit of sweetness in it. For me, for my palate, I enjoy a little bit of sweetness to balance off that Cabrales. Definitely, yeah.
For me, I would go with probably one of the more brandy-ish ports, rather than the sort of viscous Ribena ports. You know what I mean? To lift, to match up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing cheese. So we're coming to the end now. Are there any other cheeses from the Asturian region which you would want people, if you were there and you were doing a cheese tour, you'd want people to pick up on it?
Well, there's another cheese called Cassin, which is again, it's going through a little bit of a revival in Asturias. And again, it's one of these cheeses which has got a similar texture to Cabrales. It's very mouth-puckering, you know, really intense, and also probably mostly only available in Asturias.
Did you say it was called Cassin?
Cassin, Casin.
Well, that's got to be related to casins, and you know, hasn't it?
Oh, it could well be, yes.
Yeah. But of course, I'm assuming that the Queso de Valdeón, the Picos de Europa, must come from this region as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Cabrales and Valdeón are less than 50 kilometers apart, but Cabrales is on the north-facing side of the mountains.
Okay.
Like facing into the Bay of Biscay.
Over the bay,
And Valdeón is facing down into the plain, and so it gets all the sun. So it's much drier on that side of the mountains. It's kind of different.
Valdeón also a mixed milk cheese, usually cow and goat, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And that has, and I mean, the thing about those goats cheeses is that they can go grey naturally by becoming blue, and you get that kind of, which gives it an ugly look, which it doesn't deserve, because it's actually, you know, quite a creamy, complex, delicious cheese.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, is it chestnut leaves on the outside or vine leaves on the outside?
Yes, sycamore.
Sycamore cheese on sycamore
leaves. Yeah. And originally the Cabrales used to be wrapped in sycamore leaves, and at some point, I think probably in the 80s, they rationalized it and replaced the leaves with foil. Ironically.
I love the idea of rationalizing Cabrales. Yes, we'll slightly tame this monster.
Yeah, we'll take the leaves away.
Instead is we'll wash it in stalactite water. That's the thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic, Rupert. I can't thank you enough.
No, thank you.
It's been brilliant talking to you. The cheeses that you've brought along have been amazing. And I encourage everyone to get online and get some Brindisa cheeses for Christmas.
Thank you very much. Yes, good idea.
Everybody, support everybody. Let's all spend all our money. Let's go into 2021 broke. That's the answer.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you then, Charlie.
Bye. Right. What shall I say? Well, I say what I always say, which is come and learn about cheese with the Academy of Cheese. Come and find about everything we do. If you don't know already, there's lots of learning out there. I believe the Cabrales is a level 2 cheese, and we're just doing level 2 online at the moment. I've got a lovely group. We are making cheese tomorrow. Very exciting. I've got a little cheese making kit. That's what you can do if you come and study with the Academy of Cheese. But apart from that, next week we have Naomi Richard, who is Tour de Fromage de France. We're doing Burgundy. Very exciting. I'm assuming we're going to get Empoisse in that, which I'm really excited about. One of my all-time favorite washed rind cheeses. Lots of other people's as well. So hopefully see you next week, 8 o'clock. Tuesday night is cheese night. Be there or